The message flashed on my screen at exactly 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. A forwarded email confirmation from Paradise Cruise Lines, not sent to me, but accidentally shared to our family cloud account. One luxury suite, champagne package, couples massage, all booked under my husband's name. For next week, during his critical business conference in Seattle. Except there was another name on the reservation, Vanessa Reynolds. My hands didn't shake. My coffee didn't spill. Something crystallized inside me, like hot sugar turning to glass. 15 years of marriage suddenly reframed in perfect, terrible clarity. I scrolled through the itinerary with a strange detachment. 5-day Caribbean cruise, ocean view balcony suite, dinner at the captain's table. All the romantic cliches you'd expect from a man who couldn't even remember which flowers I preferred on our anniversary. "Working late again tonight, babe?" He had texted me just an hour earlier. "Don't wait up." I zoomed in on the cruise details, noticing the suite number, 1243 deck 10, starboard side. Something about seeing those specific details made it real. This wasn't just an affair. This was planning, calculation, a parallel life being built while I maintained ours. What a fool I'd been. I remember standing up and walking to our bedroom closet, the one we shared. His suits hung next to my dresses like they belonged there. His shoes aligned with mine. The physical proximity of our things suddenly seemed obscene. I was about to start pulling his clothes down, to tear through fabric and shred memories, when my phone chimed again. Another notification from the family cloud. A photo appeared. A woman, young, blonde, perfect teeth, posing in front of a mirror in lingerie that still had price tags dangling. The caption read, "Can't wait for you to take this off me on our trip. Counting down the days." I recognized her. Vanessa Reynolds, the new client service director at my husband's firm. The one he had insisted on inviting to our holiday party last December. The one who had looked at me with something close to pity while accepting a glass of wine in my home. What stopped me from destroying his things wasn't restraint. It was a random memory. A conversation I'd overheard at a charity gala 3 months ago. Vanessa, loudly discussing her engagement to some tech entrepreneur, showing off a gaudy diamond ring, talking about their upcoming June wedding. I sat on the edge of our bed, phone still in hand, and did something I'd never done before. I typed her name into social media. Her profile was public, filled with hashtags about blessed and future mirrors. And there he was, her fiancé, tagged in dozens of photos. Bradley Norton, handsome in that polished Silicon Valley way. His own profile full of startup success stories and motivational quotes. One recent post caught my eye. "Headed on a solo trip before the wedding madness. Time to clear my head and come back ready to start forever with a Vanessa Reynolds. Last hurrah. New beginnings." The cruise dates. They matched exactly. A strange calm settled over me. The kind that comes when the universe delivers something so perfectly timed it feels like fate. I opened my laptop and navigated to Paradise Cruise Lines. Deck plans, cabin availability, my credit card already in hand. 20 minutes later, I had a confirmation email of my own. Single occupancy. Cabin 1245, right next door to their love nest. The symmetry was too perfect to ignore. I took a deep breath and did the only rational thing a woman in my position could do. I found Bradley Norton's business email through his company website and sent him a message. "Mr. Norton, I believe we have something important to discuss regarding our respective partners and their upcoming Caribbean cruise. Would you be available for coffee tomorrow? It concerns your fiancée, Vanessa Reynolds, and my husband, who have made plans that I think you should be aware of. Attached is the booking confirmation." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just waited, watching the little dots that indicated he was reading my message, typing, stopping, typing again. His response came through 3 minutes later. Where and when? The next morning, I sat at a corner table in an upscale coffee shop downtown, watching the door. I recognized him immediately, taller in person, with that confident stride of someone used to commanding rooms. His eyes found mine across the space. Recognition, understanding, the look of someone whose world was also shattering. He sat down across from me, no handshake, no introduction needed. "Show me everything," he said quietly. And I did. By the time our coffees had gone cold, We had formed an alliance born of shared betrayal. Not just any alliance, a pact, a strategy. They think they're so clever, I said, finally allowing a bitter smile. They have no idea what's coming. Bradley's expression hardened with resolve. What exactly did you have in mind? I leaned forward, lowering my voice. I already booked the cabin next to theirs. But one person watching their romantic getaway crumble isn't nearly as satisfying as two, don't you think? He matched my lean, his voice equally low. Are you suggesting what I think you're suggesting? I'm suggesting we both take that cruise. I'm suggesting we become very, very good friends who happen to be everywhere they go. I'm suggesting we make this the vacation they'll never forget, for all the wrong reasons. For the first time since sitting down, Bradley smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of someone imagining sweet, calculated retribution. I'm in, he said. But we need to be smarter than they were. We need a plan that doesn't just catch them. It destroys whatever fantasy they've built. I nodded, feeling something close to excitement stir beneath my anger. By the time we dock back in Miami, they'll wish they'd never set foot on that ship. The week before the cruise passed in a performance worthy of an Academy Award. I kissed my husband goodbye as he packed his conference clothes. I helped him pick a tie for his presentation. I even drove him to the airport, waving from the departure lane with a smile plastered on my face. I'll miss you, he said, his eyes not quite meeting mine. Oh, I'm sure the time will fly by, I replied, thinking of the swimsuit and evening dresses already packed in my own suitcase, hidden at Bradley's temporary apartment. As soon as his plane took off, not to Seattle, but to Miami, I drove straight to the port where Bradley was waiting. We had spent every day of the past week planning, coordinating, and building a story that would make us seem like old college friends reuniting by chance. We practiced our reactions for when we would accidentally bump into our cheating partners. We memorized the ship's layout. We booked excursions identical to the ones they had scheduled. How are you holding up? Bradley asked as we checked in at the cruise terminal, his hand briefly touching my shoulder. I keep cycling between wanting to cry and wanting to push them both overboard, I admitted. He nodded. I've already looked up maritime law. Unfortunately, that would be frowned upon. That unexpected flash of dark humor made me laugh for the first time in days. It felt foreign in my throat. We boarded separately, agreeing to meet later after we'd settled into our cabins. I found mine easily, 12:45, right next to where my husband would soon be canoodling with his mistress. I pressed my ear against the connecting wall. Empty, for now. Their flight wouldn't arrive for another few hours. I unpacked methodically, hanging dresses that I'd bought specifically for this cruise. Dresses my husband had never seen. Dresses chosen to make a statement when the inevitable confrontation came. At 6 p.m., Bradley texted, "They've boarded. Just saw them at check-in." They didn't see me. My heart raced. My palms grew damp. The moment was approaching faster than I'd anticipated. I met Bradley at a bar 3 decks up, far enough away that we wouldn't immediately run into them. He already had a martini waiting for me. "To the most twisted vacation either of us will ever take," he said, raising his glass. I clinked mine against it. "May we survive with our dignity, if not our marriages." My marriage was over before it began, apparently. His voice held the same hollow quality I'd felt in my chest for days. We shared our stories then, filling in the blanks of our relationships. Bradley had met Vanessa at a tech conference 2 years ago. They'd gotten engaged fast. Too fast, he now realized. There had been signs of her infidelity, unexplained absences, guarded phone behavior, sudden work emergencies. I ignored all of it, he said, staring into his drink. I wanted so badly to believe I'd found the right person. 15 years, I replied. 15 years I gave him. We talked about children. We decided together to focus on our careers first. We had a timeline. Next year was supposed to be our year to try. My voice caught unexpectedly. Bradley's expression softened. "I'm sorry. Don't be. Be angry. I am." We spent hours talking, drinking just enough to stay loose, but not enough to cloud our judgment. We needed to be sharp, alert, ready. Around 10 p.m., we ventured down to the main dining room for the welcome dinner. And there they were, seated at a table for two near the windows. My husband's hand rested on Vanessa's lower back as they studied the menu. Intimate, comfortable, practiced. The sight hit me harder than I'd expected. This wasn't their first trip together. This wasn't new. The realization made my knees buckle slightly. Bradley steadied me with a hand on my elbow. "Not yet," he whispered. "Let them have tonight. Let them think they've gotten away with it. Tomorrow, we start." We retreated to a different restaurant, but I couldn't eat. My stomach was a knot of acid and rage. "How long do you think it's been going on?" I asked, pushing pasta around my plate. "Does it matter? A day, a month, a year? They both betrayed us. It matters to me," I insisted. "I need to know how much of my life has been a lie." Back in my cabin that night, I pressed my ear to the wall again. I could hear them, laughing, murmuring, the occasional squeak of bed springs. I recorded it all, evidence for what was to come. I barely slept. When morning came, I met Bradley for breakfast on the Lido deck. We had determined that our unfaithful partners had booked a snorkeling excursion at our first port of call, a small private island owned by the cruise line. "Ready for day one?" Bradley asked, sliding a coffee toward me. "As ready as I'll ever be." We boarded the tender boat to the island 30 minutes after my husband and Vanessa had left. We spotted them easily on the beach, sharing a lounger, her head on his chest, his fingers trailing through her hair. Bradley and I set up our own chairs exactly in their line of sight, but angled so they wouldn't immediately notice us. We waited for the perfect moment. The recognition, the shock. It came when my husband got up to get drinks from the beach bar. He turned, 2 frozen cocktails in hand, and froze mid-step when he saw me. The drinks tilted, blue liquid sloshing over his hands. I gave a small wave, as casual as if we were passing in a grocery store. His face drained of color so quickly I thought he might faint. He stood paralyzed, unable to move toward either me or Vanessa, who was still obliviously scrolling through her phone. I straightened my new swimsuit, a bold red piece I'd never have chosen before, and walked directly toward him. "What a coincidence," I said, loud enough for nearby sunbathers to hear. "Fancy meeting you here. Seattle looks different than I remembered." He opened and closed his mouth, speechless. Over his shoulder, I saw Vanessa look up, confusion crossing her face, then dawning horror as she spotted Bradley approaching from behind me. "What? How?" my husband finally managed. "Your mistress should really be more careful about sharing your itinerary to our family cloud account," I said pleasantly. "Oh, and you should meet my friend Bradley. I believe he's already acquainted with your girlfriend." I turned to Vanessa, whose face had turned the color of spoiled milk. "The engagement ring looks lovely in the sunlight. Does my husband know you're engaged? Or is that just a detail you overlooked while planning your romantic getaway?" People were watching now, staring openly at the drama unfolding on the perfect white sand. "This isn't what it looks like," my husband finally said, the most cliched line possible. "Really?" I looked pointedly at the 2 blue drinks, then at Vanessa's shocked face, then back to him. "Because it looks exactly like you're on a cruise with your mistress while telling your wife you're at a business conference in Seattle." Bradley stepped forward, addressing Vanessa directly. "We've booked all the same excursions you have. Isn't that a wonderful coincidence? We'll have so much quality time together on this trip." And that was just the beginning. Day 1 of 5. The foundation of what would become the most excruciating vacation for 2 people who thought they'd gotten away with betrayal. I knew then that I'd given this man everything. My youth, my trust, my unwavering support through career changes and family losses. I'd been there through everything, believing we were building something meaningful together. And all along, he'd been constructing a separate life. A life that didn't include me. I gave them one last smile. "Enjoy your drinks. The cruise has just begun." That night, Bradley and I regrouped in my cabin, dissecting the day's confrontation and fine-tuning our strategy for the days ahead. The initial shock had delivered satisfaction, but it wasn't enough. Not nearly enough for the depth of their betrayal. "They're scrambling," Bradley observed, pacing the small confines of my room. I intercepted Vanessa trying to change their dinner reservations and excursion bookings. I nodded, scrolling through the ship's app on my tablet. They won't get far. I've made friends with 3 different crew members who are keeping me updated on any changes they attempt. This wasn't a spontaneous reaction anymore. During that week of planning, I'd been methodical in ways I never knew I could be. What my husband didn't know: I'd photographed every document in his office before leaving home. I'd downloaded his text message history through our phone plan's backup service. I'd contacted our bank and flagged large expenditures for the past year, creating a perfect timeline of their affair through hotel charges and gift purchases. What Vanessa didn't know: Bradley had been equally thorough, compiling screenshots of suspicious messages, tracking her location history, and, most damaging of all, documenting how she'd been siphoning investor funds from their joint startup venture to finance luxury purchases. "Tomorrow's the formal night dinner," I said, studying the schedule. "They'll expect us to make a scene." Bradley stopped pacing. "So we don't. We do the opposite." "Exactly." I smiled, feeling a cold clarity. "We'll be gracious, friendly even. We'll invite them to join us at our table. We'll make casual conversation about wedding plans and business ventures." Psychological warfare. Bradley nodded appreciatively. The anticipation of confrontation is often worse than the confrontation itself. I stood up and walked to my suitcase, pulling out a sealed envelope. I've been saving this for the right moment. Now I think I know when to use it. Inside were photos. Images from ship security cameras showing my husband and Vanessa on previous cruises. Dates, timestamps, proof of a pattern extending back 18 months. The head of security had been surprisingly helpful after I'd explained my situation and offered a generous consultation fee. "How did you get these?" Bradley asked, impressed. "Let's just say when your husband brags about always booking the same cruise line for business trips, it creates a searchable pattern." I laid out the photos chronologically. 8 cruises in 18 months, always with her, always during what he claimed were conferences or client meetings. Bradley whistled low. "That's not an affair. That's a second relationship." "Exactly. And tomorrow night, I want them both to understand that we know everything. Not just this cruise, everything." We stayed up past midnight, plotting each interaction, each coincidental encounter for the remaining days. We weren't just improvising anymore. This was choreographed retribution. The next morning brought another excursion, a tour of ancient ruins on our first port of call. As planned, Bradley and I arrived just as my husband and Vanessa were boarding the tour bus. The color drained from their faces when they saw us. I smiled brightly and took the seat directly behind them. "Good morning. Sleep well?" Vanessa stared straight ahead, rigid with tension. My husband attempted a weak smile. "Look, can we talk privately?" "Oh, we'll have plenty of time to talk," I assured him. "We have 3 more days together on this lovely ship. No rush at all." Throughout the tour, Bradley and I maintained pleasant conversation, occasionally directing innocuous questions to our uncomfortable companions. "Have you visited these ruins before? Isn't the architecture fascinating?" Each normal interaction seemed to unnerve them more than outright confrontation would have. By the time we returned to the ship, they were visibly unraveling, exchanging tense whispers, checking over their shoulders, jumping at the sight of us around every corner. For the formal dinner that evening, I wore a black dress I'd purchased specifically for this cruise, elegant, understated, with just enough edge to make a statement. Bradley wore a tailored suit that highlighted every advantage of his athletic build. We entered the dining room deliberately 15 minutes after my husband and Vanessa were seated. "May we join you?" I asked, already pulling out a chair at their table for 2. The maitre d' mentioned you had space. They couldn't refuse without creating a scene. Trapped by social convention, they shifted uncomfortably as we settled in. "Wonderful evening, isn't it?" Bradley began, unfolding his napkin with practiced ease. "Vanessa, that dress looks familiar. Didn't you wear it to the Henderson Charity Gala last month?" Her eyes widened slightly. The Henderson Gala had been a work event, one where she'd introduced my husband as her colleague. Yes, I think so," she stammered. I signaled a waiter. "Champagne for the table, please. We're celebrating." My husband's expression darkened. What exactly are we celebrating? I smiled, reaching into my clutch to withdraw the envelope of photos. Anniversaries. Specifically, the 18-month anniversary of your first cruise together. I laid the photos on the table one by one, like dealing cards. Caribbean, March last year. Mediterranean, May. Alaska, July. Each during what you told me were business trips. The blood drained from his face. How did you— I've always admired your consistency, I continued, my voice steady despite the thunder of my heartbeat. Same cruise line, often the same cabin category. It made tracking surprisingly easy. Vanessa's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. Bradley chose that moment to add his contribution. Speaking of consistency, he said, sliding a folder across the table to Vanessa, I've been reviewing our company financials. Interesting pattern of withdrawals coinciding with these cruise dates. Her glass froze halfway to her lips. That's not— You can't prove— Our investors were quite interested in the documentation. Bradley continued calmly. I had a fascinating call with them yesterday. This was the moment I'd prepared for, seeing the realization dawn that we weren't just angry spouses lashing out. We had been methodical, patient. We had receipts, literally and figuratively. What do you want? My husband finally asked, his voice barely audible over the dining room's ambient noise. I leaned forward, maintaining eye contact. For tonight? Just dinner? Pleasant conversation. Perhaps you could tell Bradley about your conference schedule for the coming months. I'm sure he'd be interested to know which business trips are actually romantic getaways. They sat frozen, trapped by their own web of lies, as the waiter arrived with champagne. I raised my glass. To truth, it always surfaces eventually. Throughout dinner, we maintained cordial conversation, periodically dropping details that confirmed how thoroughly we'd investigated their affair. Each revelation landed like a precise incision, small cuts that accumulated into significant damage. By dessert, both of them looked physically ill. When we finally stood to leave, I placed a room key card on the table. For your convenience, I explained. It's to the cabin adjacent to yours. We've been taking turns listening through the wall. The soundproofing is surprisingly poor. My husband's face contorted with the realization that even their most intimate moments had been compromised. As Bradley and I walked away, he whispered, That was masterful. But it's just the beginning, isn't it? I nodded, feeling not joy but a cold satisfaction. Tomorrow, we move to phase 2. Tonight was about showing them we know everything. Tomorrow is about showing them what that knowledge will cost them. Back in my cabin, I finally allowed myself a moment of genuine emotion. Not for my husband, but for the life I had believed in. 15 years, gone. Trust, shattered. Future plans, evaporated. But in their place was something unexpected. A sense of my own power. I had been blindsided by betrayal, but had responded not with helpless grief, but with calculated action. I sent a final text to Bradley before sleep. Thank you for today. Tomorrow, we show no mercy. His response came immediately. They created this situation. We're just ensuring they experience the consequences they deserve. I fell asleep to the sound of muffled arguing through the wall, a lullaby of justice beginning to unfold. The third day of the cruise dawned bright and clear. Perfect weather for what Bradley and I had planned. While my husband and Vanessa had spent the night arguing, we'd been finalizing details with various crew members and other passengers we'd recruited to our cause. Our first encounter came at breakfast. We spotted them at a corner table, hunched over coffee, looking exhausted and tense. Instead of approaching, we seated ourselves prominently in the center of the dining area, laughing and chatting with a group of passengers we'd befriended, specifically 2 couples who happened to be from my husband's industry. Richard and Diana are from Westbrook Partners, I called out as we passed their table later, gesturing to our new friends. Apparently, they've been trying to reach your firm about that merger proposal. Such a coincidence meeting them here. My husband's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. Westbrook Partners was indeed a potential major client his firm had been pursuing for months. Now they were hearing about his business conference while he sat beside his mistress. We're having drinks with them later, Bradley added cheerfully. You should join us. I'm sure they'd love to hear about your professional commitments. They didn't respond, but the message was clear. Their private affair was becoming increasingly public, with professional consequences looming. By midday, we'd implemented the next phase. During their scheduled couples massage at the ship's spa, they arrived to find their appointment accidentally changed to separate treatments in different rooms. Meanwhile, Bradley and I enjoyed their original time slot, having befriended the spa manager with a generous tip and a compelling story of anniversary celebrations. Small disruptions continued throughout the day. Their lunch reservation mysteriously canceled, their shore excursion overbooked, their special requests lost in the system. Nothing dramatic enough to blame on sabotage, just a consistent stream of inconveniences that chipped away at their romantic getaway. But the real turning point came that evening. The ship's program featured a passenger talent show followed by a dance competition. Bradley and I had signed up, and we'd also entered my husband and Vanessa's names without their knowledge. Our next contestants, the cruise director announced to the packed lounge, are joining us to celebrate a special occasion. Let's welcome David and Vanessa. A spotlight swung to their table, where they sat frozen in horror as their names were called. The crowd applauded encouragingly. We've heard they're celebrating a special anniversary, the director continued, reading from the card I'd submitted. 18 months of relationship bliss. Though I'm also hearing congratulations are in order for Vanessa's engagement to… Wait, that can't be right. Confused murmurs spread through the audience as my husband and Vanessa remained glued to their seats, mortification evident on their faces. Perhaps they're feeling shy, Bradley called out from our table. Maybe they'd be more comfortable if we showed everyone their celebration photos first. Before they could react, the large screen behind the stage lit up with images. The security camera photos of their previous cruises, interspersed with screenshots of text messages between them planning their rendezvous. I had carefully edited out anything explicitly incriminating, leaving just enough context for the audience to piece together the situation. We didn't authorize, my husband sputtered, finally finding his voice as he stood. Oh, one more special photo, I announced, nodding to the AV technician I'd befriended. The screen changed to show Vanessa's engagement announcement post, complete with her beaming beside Bradley, enormous ring prominently displayed. The date stamp was unmistakable. 6 months into her affair with my husband. The room fell silent as understanding dawned on the audience. Then came the whispers, the side eyes, the judgment they had avoided by conducting their affair on anonymous cruise ships where no one knew them. I believe that's our cue, Bradley said, standing and offering me his hand. Shall we show them how it's done? We took to the dance floor for the competition, performing a tango we'd practiced during our week of planning. Every dramatic turn and dip was executed with precision, our eyes locked in a performance of connection that drew enthusiastic applause. As we finished, I caught sight of my husband and Vanessa slipping out of the lounge, heads down, unable to face the room full of strangers who now knew their secret. We followed at a distance, watching them argue in a secluded corner of the deck. Their body language told the story: accusations, denials, recriminations. They're imploding, Bradley observed quietly. Good, I replied, feeling a satisfaction deeper than I'd expected. But we're not done yet. That night, we implemented the final stage of our ship-based plan. While they were at dinner, relocated to room service after the public humiliation, I arranged for the ship's photography team to deliver something special to their cabin, a commemorative album we'd created using the ship's photo service. Inside were professional photos taken throughout the cruise, candid shots of their arguments, their tense body language, their evident discomfort as Bradley and I appeared in frame after frame. The photographers had been generously compensated to capture these moments discreetly. The album's title, embossed in elegant script, When the Truth Surfaced, A Voyage of Discovery. We watched from down the corridor as a steward delivered the package. Through the crack in their door, I glimpsed my husband's face as he opened it. The dawning recognition, the slump of defeat. But the true culmination came the following morning as the ship prepared to dock at our final port of call. Bradley and I had arranged for a special announcement over the ship's intercom system. Attention passengers. Would David Thompson and Vanessa Reynolds please report to the purser's office regarding an urgent matter with your disembarkation documents? When they arrived, visibly anxious, they found not only the purser, but also a representative from the cruise line's corporate office who happened to be on board. Another fortunate connection we'd made. Mr. Thompson, Ms. Reynolds, the representative began formally. It has come to our attention that you may have used fraudulent information when booking this cruise. My husband frowned. What are you talking about? Your reservation indicates this trip was booked through Meridian Enterprises as a business expense, with tax documentation submitted accordingly. However, the nature of your stay appears to be personal rather than professional. Vanessa paled. That's not... We didn't. Additionally, the representative continued, there's the matter of company credit card usage for non-business expenses, which has been flagged by your firm's compliance department. Bradley and I watched from a discreet distance as my husband's professional world began to collapse in real time. The evidence we'd compiled, including email exchanges I'd forwarded to his company's ethics hotline, had triggered an internal investigation. Meanwhile, Vanessa received her own devastating news. Her access to their startup's financial accounts had been frozen pending an investor-led audit. Bradley had moved quickly, and her financial manipulations were now under scrutiny. As they stood there, their carefully constructed parallel lives disintegrating around them, I felt a strange emotion. Not happiness, not quite vindication, but a profound sense of justice being served. This isn't just about the betrayal, I said quietly to Bradley as we watched from afar. It's about the calculation, the premeditation, the years of lies. He nodded. They thought they were too smart to get caught, too entitled to face consequences. Do you regret any of it? I asked, suddenly curious about his feelings now that our plan was reaching its conclusion. Bradley considered this for a moment. I regret trusting someone who didn't deserve it. I regret not seeing the signs earlier. But this, he gestured toward the unfolding scene. This I don't regret at all. As my husband and Vanessa left the purser's office, their faces ashen with the realization that their actions had real-world consequences beyond their romantic entanglement, I stepped forward into their path. Enjoying the cruise? I asked, my voice steady and clear. My husband looked at me with new eyes, not with anger or defiance, but with something like fear. Fear of what else I might know. What else I might have done. This is just the beginning, I told him quietly. When we dock tomorrow, you'll find your belongings packed and waiting at a hotel. The locks have been changed. Divorce papers are with my attorney. And every member of our family and social circle has received a detailed account of exactly how and why our marriage ended. I turned to Vanessa. As for you, I wonder if your wedding vendors will refund your deposits. Bradley tells me he's been quite thorough in his communications with them. She flinched as though I'd slapped her. The thing about betrayal, I continued, addressing them both, is that it shows who people truly are. You both showed me exactly who you are. I'm simply making sure everyone else sees it too. With that, Bradley and I walked away, leaving them standing shell-shocked in our wake. That evening, our final night on the ship, we dined at the captain's table. The reservation originally made for my husband and Vanessa now transferred to us through the connections we'd cultivated. To new beginnings, Bradley proposed, raising his glass. I clinked mine against it, feeling lighter than I had in years. And, to the truth, no matter how painful, it always sets you free. 6 months after that fateful cruise, I stood on a different deck, this one belonging to my new beachfront condo. The ocean stretched before me, endless and uncertain, much like my future. But for the first time in forever, that uncertainty felt exhilarating rather than frightening. The divorce had been finalized with surprising speed. My husband, faced with the mountain of evidence I'd compiled and the professional embarrassment already unfolding, hadn't contested any of my terms. His affair had cost him more than just his marriage. The ethics investigation at his firm had resulted in a demotion and professional censure. The cruise line had also banned him from future bookings after determining he had indeed committed fraud with his business expense claims. As for Vanessa, her story had unraveled even more dramatically. The financial improprieties Bradley had discovered were merely the tip of the iceberg. Once investors began looking closely at their startup's books, they found a pattern of misappropriation that led to criminal charges. Her wedding, needless to say, never materialized, though the canceled vendor contracts and non-refundable deposits had created a financial burden that compounded her legal troubles. I took a sip of my morning coffee, watching seagulls wheel against the clear blue sky. My phone chimed with a text message from Bradley. Just landed. Still on for lunch? Our relationship had evolved in unexpected ways since the cruise. Not romantic. We were both too scarred for that leap, but something equally valuable. A genuine friendship forged in the crucible of shared betrayal and recovery. We had kept in touch through the aftermath, supporting each other through divorce proceedings, legal complications, and the emotional turbulence of rebuilding our lives. He had relocated to open a new office of his now thriving firm in my coastal city, a business decision that had coincided with my own relocation after the divorce. "See you at the bistro at 1," I texted back. As I prepared for our lunch, I reflected on how differently things had turned out than either of us had expected. When we'd boarded that cruise 6 months ago, consumed by rage and betrayal, neither of us had imagined emerging stronger or finding a genuine connection with each other. The waterfront bistro was busy when I arrived, but Bradley had secured our usual table on the patio. He stood when he saw me, his smile genuine. "The Tokyo deal closed," he announced as I sat down. "Investors are thrilled." "Congratulations." I raised my water glass in a mock toast. "Not bad for someone whose fiancé tried to tank his company." He laughed, a sound that had become more frequent as months passed. "Speaking of tanking, heard anything about our favorite couple?" I shook my head. "Not directly, but Caroline mentioned seeing David at a conference last month. Apparently, he's lost weight and looks haunted." Caroline, my former neighbor, had remained firmly in my corner throughout the divorce. "Vanessa's plea deal finalized," Bradley replied. "Probation, restitution, and community service. Her parents had to put up their house for her legal fees." We exchanged these updates not with malice, but with the detached interest of people who had moved beyond the need for revenge. The satisfaction had faded into something more valuable: indifference. Our food arrived, and conversation shifted to our current lives. My new consulting business, his expansion plans, the charity gala we were both attending next weekend. "I've been meaning to ask," Bradley said as we finished dessert. "That cruise line sent me a promotional email yesterday. Caribbean itinerary, holiday special." I raised an eyebrow. "Planning another revenge cruise so soon?" "Actually," he said, his expression turning serious, "I was thinking about reclaiming the experience. A trip without agenda or manipulation, just enjoyment." "Sounds nice," I replied, surprised by his suggestion. "Would you consider coming? As friends?" He added quickly, "I think we both deserve to experience a cruise that isn't orchestrated around someone else's betrayal." I considered his offer, this unexpected invitation to revisit the scene of our strange alliance. 6 months ago, I would have recoiled at the thought. Now, I found myself nodding. "I'd like that," I said simply. As we walked along the boardwalk after lunch, I realized something profound had shifted. The cruise that was meant to expose a betrayal had inadvertently revealed something else entirely: my own resilience. I had survived not just my husband's infidelity, but the collapse of a future I'd believed in completely. "You know," I said as we paused to watch sailboats in the harbor, "sometimes I almost want to thank them." Bradley looked surprised. "Thank them? For what?" "For forcing me to become someone stronger than I ever knew I could be. For inadvertently introducing me to a true friend." I gestured between us. Their betrayal was painful, but what came after, I wouldn't trade that for anything. He nodded slowly. "I've had the same thought. If Vanessa hadn't cheated, I'd be married to someone who was willing to steal from our company and lie to my face daily. Instead, I'm here, rebuilding something authentic." The sun glinted off the water, casting everything in a golden light. In that moment, I realized the most unexpected outcome of all. True closure doesn't come from revenge, satisfying as it might be. It comes from building something new from the wreckage, something honest and real. "So," Bradley said, checking his watch, I should head back for my conference call. But about that cruise? Winter holiday? New Year's itinerary? I smiled, feeling a lightness that had once seemed impossible. New Year's sounds perfect, a fitting way to start the next chapter. As we parted ways, I took one last look at the ocean. The same ocean we'd sailed on during that fateful cruise. The water that had carried us through betrayal now stretched before me as a symbol of possibility. The horizon was wide open, the future unwritten, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely excited to see